Strauss for Bridges for Peace. It's the 30th of November, Thursday evening, and with us tonight we have again, back by popular demand, a special guest, Doron Keidar. Doron, for everyone who wasn't with us last time, can you please just give a little bit of a background of who you are and how you've come to be here?
Well, basically, my background is that I work in executive protection on my day-to-day work. I also happen to be a reservist in the paratrooper battalion. We're in a special forces outfit within the paratrooper battalion that is comprised of reservists with many years of experience. And what we do is we help operate with the tip of the spear of the paratrooper battalion within the operations in the Gaza Strip as a response to the attack on the 7th of October, where by now, if nobody knows this already, I doubt it, but you've most likely heard of the horrible attack that took place, where over roughly 2,500 terrorists crossed the border into Israel from Gaza. And they attacked on a Sabbath. They attacked on a high holy day on Shmini Atzeret. And what they did is they did something very cowardice. They attacked our civilians. They did not go for our military installations. They didn't go for military targets, although some were targeted. But their main attack was ironically civilians. That was the main brunt of the attack on our people on that day. And unfortunately, roughly 1,400 Israelis were murdered, including soldiers. And then we ended up with over 200 hostages that have been held captive in Gaza ever since. Again, to this recording right now, thankfully, we've had some hostages returned. We have just been in a ceasefire for a few days now. And in response to the ceasefire, or part of the agreement with the ceasefire, is that Israel gets back our hostages, but at a very, very heavy price, where we also, in exchange for giving the Hamas breathing room in our military operations, we also were forced to, not forced, I wouldn't say, but we agreed to return terrorists who had blood on their hands that were sitting in Israeli prisons. So that's more or less why I'm here right now. And following up on our interview that we had not too long ago, where I was on our base along the Gaza Strip.
Indeed. Actually, yes, I'm surprised that you're here tonight because you are on leave, right? 48 hours, you said?
Yes. So we get a short leave. So it's part of the privilege that the reservists get. What people are not even aware of is that many of the fighters who have been fighting in Gaza, many of the soldiers, and I've come in contact with many of them, they haven't either spoken with their homes or seen civilian life in nearly 50 days. So we're actually privileged to even be on leave. A good number of these young soldiers are still in the thicket of the war that's happening, and that's just part of their reality as well.
Wow, Doron, that's absolutely, I can't even imagine. But thank you very, very much for giving us one of those 48 hours. So let's speak about where we are at the moment, ceasefire. We've had ceasefire now. It's what, our 7th day? Tomorrow will be the 7th day. We started on Saturday, correct? So what's happened during the past week? How's the morale? How are the soldiers? How are they taking the ceasefire?
To be honest, my personal opinion is that the ceasefire is not very good for us because the military has a momentum that we've been building up for weeks now. by targeting many of these terrorist installations. And it's important to point out that the terrorist installations are within civilian population, within schools, mosques, hospitals, you name it. No soft target is off limits for Hamas. In fact, they purposely choose these targets to operate out of, so that it makes Israel look bad. It helps justify Hamas's, I would say, demonic venom of hatred towards the state of Israel, towards the Jewish nation, and their desire to annihilate us. And as it says in the charter, the Hamas charter itself, is that their main goal is to eliminate and to make a Jew Rhine, or free of Jews, from the river to the sea. And you have the useful idiots, as I like to call them, all over the world, who chant this chant all over campuses, all over the world, all over Free Palestine rallies, all over the world, without even an inkling of understanding what does that mean. In fact, I challenge our audience, whoever's watching right now, if you're one of those people, why don't you ask yourself geographically what that means? Because I don't think they have. I think what they've done is they listen to the slogan "Free Palestine," and it sounds beautiful, it sounds poetic, it sounds patriotic, or let's help the underdog. The underdog. The underdog Palestinians against the big bad Israeli military. When in reality, Hamas has and Islamic Jihad, and there's a whole slew of terrorist entities in the Gaza Strip, by the way. It's not just Hamas, but Hamas is at the forefront of it. They have received billions of dollars from all over the world, and mainly from Iran, or mainly the training actually from Iran and the strategy. So what people I don't think understand is that these guys are not, they're not freedom fighters. They are well-trained military and tacticianers, and they're not for freedom. What they're for is bloodthirsty. What they're for is murdering Jews. And what their goal, as I pointed out, is that Jews will not exist within the river to the sea. And that's the Jordan River, for those who are not understanding what I'm talking about, to the Mediterranean Sea. In other words, the whole state of Israel. That is within their charter, and they have held true to that charter. And I also challenge people who think that I'm extreme, just listen to the son of Hamas, Musab Hassan Youssef. He's the son of one of the founders of Hamas, who has left the terrorist organization because his eyes were open to the evils of the entity and to the extreme murdering and killing of one terrorist faction against another. And he's just thought to himself, how could this be if we're fighting for a righteous cause and we're killing each other? And so it's just important for people, I think, to understand that the reality is much different than what you're seeing either on the news or what's being spewed out by the Palestinian media propaganda. And so I get lots of hate on my social media when I'm trying to share what we're doing to eliminate this threat against Israel. And I'm the bad guy, apparently.
Now, Doron, we touched the last interview, we touched a little bit on this, and I want us to unpack this more. We spoke about a tunnel system under Gaza. Now, when I hear a tunnel system, I think, you go out into your backyard with a shovel, maybe you dig around a little bit. That's what comes to mind when I think about a tunnel. Can you shed a little bit of light on what these tunnels mean and what the implication of this tunnel system is?
Well, I'll put it like this. The implication is like what we're seeing right now. We're trying to target, like I said, the Hamas terrorists who are firing out of civilian population areas from schools and mosques and etc. And when we go to those areas and physically go to the actual location, what you will find is that the way these terrorists access these places is from underground. They're the ultimate coward of coward warrior. Okay, they hide like rats in a tunnel system that is underneath the civilian population of the Gaza Strip. And so they use the civilian population above ground as fodder, okay, for the IDF. Because what they will do is they will use the underground system. They will come up, they will attack, and then they go quickly back underground and they go deep into these systems and hide and make it virtually impossible for us to put our, to put our hands on them. And so to get to the terrorists, we have to maneuver an underground system that spans it's about over 300 miles. So think about this for a minute. Anybody understand what 300 miles is? That's basically the length of the state of Israel, almost, roughly. And that's what Hamas has developed in a very small strip and sliver of the landmass of Israel. And underneath this small sliver, you have layers and layers and layers of tunnel systems. So I'm not talking about just, let's say, a one layer, and here's the, above ground, and you just go down, here's your tunnel. It's layered, it's multi-layered. And like I said, they're cowards. They use this system, and they've invested, like I said, billions of dollars that have been given to help build schools, to help build infrastructures, to help better the lives of the Palestinians. That goes to them every year from the European Union, from the United States. Even Israel gives money to the Palestinian cause of helping aid the Palestinians so they can better their lives. And what does Hamas do with all that money? They buy rockets. They build massive underground infrastructures so that they can cowardly use them to target our civilians, and then also use them to have tunnel warfare against the IDF when they are luring us into a conflict, to try to get them, to stop firing thousands upon thousands of rockets that have been fired into Israel. In fact, I have this on display in my office. So if people think that I'm joking or I'm messing around when I'm saying that they're firing rockets at us, this right here is just one of thousands, and this is just a piece of the rocket after the Iron Dome has intercepted it. So this piece right here, as you can see, it has fins, and it's very crude. It's not proper rockets, but when you have enough money and enough hardware, you can create thousands upon thousands of these types of makeshift rockets. And then what they do is they literally just fire them unendingly into civilian populated areas here in Israel. And so there's no other way to stop it except for the IDF to literally get into the openings of these tunnels, identify them, see where they lead to, and then to demolish them through, we use detonation, and we use lots of different techniques that I can't elaborate on. But we do what we can, in other words, to put an end to these tunnel systems that are creating terror, not just for us, but also for the Palestinians. Can you only imagine that in your park where you go walk your dog or take your kid to go swing on the swings, you have a rocket system that comes out of underground and starts firing rockets. I can't imagine being a Palestinian living in that kind of reality. And when people say free Palestine, then you need to understand that the best way to free Palestine is to let people like me do my job. Let us stop Hamas, plain and simple.
Doron, let's go back to those tunnels, because when you speak about tunnels and the Hamas going back under the tunnels, and I think the image that comes to mind for many of us is the Viet Cong tunnels. What are we looking at here? I see a mental picture of Hamas crawling down into the tunnels. Is this more sophisticated? Is this a little bit better than what the Viet Cong had?
Oh, much more sophisticated. You can drive vehicles under there. Okay.
What?
It is very, very elaborate. Very elaborate. It's basically underground cities. Okay. I'm talking about every amenity that you need to survive Israeli air attacks. And by the way, part of the complication that we have in eliminating these terror tunnels is that the U.S. military will not issue the Israeli Air Force the proper, like a bunker buster rockets. Okay, so the same systems that the United States used against the Taliban in Afghanistan that were hiding in caves and so on, and made it almost impossible for the U.S. Forces to eliminate the terrorists in Afghanistan. That's what we're wanting to use. And it's actually because of the United States pressure and unwillingness to allow us to use those systems, those same systems that they use. So there's a double standard here. And that's something I think that also people don't understand. It's like, yes, we have a very, very, very strong military and we have a lot of capabilities, but at the same time, can you imagine having your hand tied behind your back, but you can be all kitted with all the gear in the world and every capability to be very dangerous, but then you're like, it's like you can't get to what you need. And so that's kind of how we feel, the soldiers feel. I can imagine also, like I said, the pilots who know that they could use a better system, but because of politics, because that's too damaging to the Palestinians. Well, unlike the United States, we don't just bomb, targets without giving a warning ahead of time. Calling cell phones, we call personal cell phones of the Gazans because we can target where they are at based on GPS location. This isn't any big secret, so to speak. This is a well-known technologies, and we use those technologies to save Palestinian lives. And so we warn them, we tell them to get away from the area well in advance of an airstrike. And so we do all of these things to stop any what the world militaries call collateral damage. I don't like that term. To me, collateral are human beings. These are human beings who could find themselves dead because I operated too aggressively, or I didn't take the civilians into account in my operations. And it's our military that goes above and beyond any moral standard to avoid any of that. And with all of that, we're still told, no, you can't use this measure, and you can't use these weapons, et cetera, et cetera. So that's our reality.
Doron, so what we're looking at here is over 300 miles of tunnels where you can drive a car through. It's concrete, it's probably air conditioned, it's probably Wi-Fi accessed. We're talking an underground city where the fighters retreat to, leaving the civilians on the ground for the civilians to absorb the mess that the fighters underground made and then retreated.
Exactly it. That's exactly it.
My goodness, my heart breaks. My heart breaks for this. How do the soldiers feel about this? What is the morale among the Israeli soldiers, knowing all these things, knowing what they're up against, and then still seeing things on social media and all these lies that are just taken for truth without a second guess?
I would say it's insulting. Many of us, we find it very insulting. And not just that, but it also reminds us of Nazi Germany in 1933. It reminds us of the sentiments of certain European nations that turned against us, that made us the scapegoat for Europe's problems, either financial or war, or post-war, etc. And we found ourselves in ghettos. And so on the one hand, like I said, it's insulting. On the other hand,
Oh
been
no,
warning people about this and I've actually years because I've seen this time. It's not a new thing. It's not like it just happened now with this conflict, but it's really shown its ugly face, I would say, in a very aggressive way more than it has in the past. And so it doesn't surprise me personally, but I can imagine many people who don't fight this fight on social media and so on, like I do, for many years, we've, found ourselves very surprised. And how could it be that the world still would retreat to this anti-Semitic rhetoric and claim that somehow we, don't have a moral compass and we don't know what's right and wrong, and that somehow we would, in fact, can you imagine we're being called Nazis?
Yeah.
Jews are being called Nazis. That the again the useful idiots, as I call them, because like you have to be stupid to even utter those words. Do you even know what a Nazi is? Do you know what Nazis stand for? Do you know what the ideology is? Do you know
Right.
why the world went to war against Nazi Germany? Um, the ignorance is so deep in today's society. It's just unbelievable on the one hand, but like I said, if you've been following it for a while, it doesn't surprise you. But it's very sad. It's very sad, and I know that it angers a lot of the soldiers, but it also strengthens our resolve
Mm,
with the slogan that we all have used many times, especially in the warrior community, is never. So it's people like me
right.
who will stand between you, the real Nazis, and us, those who want to eliminate the Jewish existence from the planet. And it's not going to happen again because of people like me, because of our Air Force, because of our tanks, and yes, because of our military might. We have developed that in response to being the world's punching bag whenever the world feels to act in an anti-Semitic sentiment towards us. So we're not going to be victims again. And a beautiful example of that, if you've seen the one of the, there's many
Right.
footages released, but one of the young ladies who was released from captivity, the Hamas operatives were coaching the hostages to smile and wave and put really nice clothes on them, you know, gave them some toys to the kids to play with as if they were taken care of in some prime condition. What the world doesn't understand is that a lot of the women were raped, including the children. Many of them are scarred for life. The atrocities that they went through are unbelievable. They were starved. Many of them were not even bathed for weeks now. Okay, this is over 7 weeks that we've been in this conflict. Um, People cannot even imagine what these hostages went through, and I'm talking about little children, little babies, all the way to the elderly that were held. And so one of the victims was like I said, a young lady, and she was coached to smile and wave, and she gave him this look like, I am not going to cooperate with you. And she went and grabbed the other hostage, there was also a female, grabbed her tight as if to protect her, basically to say, I'm not a victim. And
Right.
that really touched me because that is, like I said, that is our attitude. Never again are we going to be led as sheep to the slaughter, because what people don't know when they watch that footage is that they have no clue that they're being released. As far as they know, they're being led to be lynched by the angry mob that was surrounding them. And that's what you don't see in the footage. You don't see the angry Palestinian mob for a long strip that were being held back, that were screaming and yelling Allahu Akbar and trying to get their hands on these hostages that were being released. And if it wasn't for the Hamas terrorists that were holding off this angry mob, knowing that, in other words, the mob knew that if they put their hands on the hostages without Hamas's approval, they would have been dead on the spot. So, on the exception of sudden death or instant death by terrorists, that's the only thing holding back the angry mob from killing those women and children that were being released. So can you imagine being that hostage and you have no clue you're being released and you're being led through this angry mob to be released and then coached to smile and wave?
So the hostages did not know they were released until the wow, because what I'm reading on social media is that the hostages knew beforehand that they would be released, and therefore they were giving such an amazing performance. Wow,
Yeah, no,
this is
maybe in
exceptional.
some cases, but I know for sure that there were cases that they had no clue that they were being released. Not a clue.
Doron, before we go on, I want to go back to the tunnels. Al
Yes.
Shifa Hospital.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, the tunnel system under that? Do we have proof that the Hamas headquarters were actually there?
Well, there's the official headquarters, but what we do know, and by the way, we destroyed it. So, congratulations to the IDF for eliminating the headquarters of Hamas, the official headquarters. Yes, they used the Shifa Hospital as I would say, as a headquarters of operations,
Mm,
because what they did is that they held a lot of the hostages that they murdered. They actually murdered them at the hospital, executed them, or held them before execution. So different scenarios. And then after executing them, they put them into the refrigerators where you normally have a body that's being preserved before burial. And so they also hid them in those refrigerators, meaning that they purposely did not label whose body it was in there. So when the IDF arrived, and you, you know, here's a little something important for people to understand. You ask yourself, why is the IDF clearing a hospital? Why is the IDF attacking and targeting a hospital? Because like we're talking about, these tunnel systems, they're very intricate, they go for miles, and they go under these soft targets, and the access to them are from these locations, because again, you wouldn't suspect a hospital to be a place where you would access a tear tunnel, but that's exactly what they did. And they disguised those tunnels as well, by the way. It's not an obvious, oh, there's a tunnel, go ahead. So they actually disguised it so that you wouldn't be able to find it easily. And so, as like I said, as our operations took us and led us to the source of where these terrorists were hiding out, it led us to the hospital. And that's when we discovered all these horrors, like I pointed out. People were being murdered, slaughtered, etc. And just again, like I said, people don't believe us or don't want to believe us. Um, this is the stuff that we're finding, guys. Okay, all of these wonderful terrorist paraphernalia. Yeah, I have tons of these. Okay, these are tons and tons and tons of all of this,
oh,
terrorist paraphernalia. A lot of it I can't show you, but there's plenty of pamphlets, um, teaching and showing the operatives what kind of vehicle the military is using, our military. So can you imagine, as an IDF soldier, you see your vehicle, you see all the specs on it, you see how to attack it, where the vulnerabilities are, etc. So this is just some of what we have found. Tons of explosives, tons. I mean, there has not been a more massive exposure of weaponry and explosives as during these operations that we have had with the IDF. Your mind can't wrap around it. In my unit, daily, we are retrieving intel, weaponry, Kalashnikovs, RPGs, you name it. So if you think that we're targeting civilians, I don't know too many civilians who run around with these kind of T-shirts. Okay, is this something a civilian wears in Gaza? Well, maybe that's your civilians, but we don't wear stuff like that where I come from.
Doron, and if I'm correct, the Al Shifa Hospital, this wasn't the first time. It's been used as an execution site for years. This was where they would take collaborators and keep them and torture them, their own people, Palestinians, before execution.
That's
So the
exactly it.
Auschwitz Hospital is a place of horrors, has always been, will always be.
Yes.
Doron, we are going to let you go back to your family to start an early Shabbat. But before you go, you spoke about never again, never again. And there's one thing that will be never again, and that is that the Jewish people will face this alone. Never again will the Jewish people face something like this alone without a Christian champion by their side. We are your Christian champions. This will never again happen, that you stand alone. And you can take that back to your soldiers. You are not alone. Never again. Not on our watch.
Thank you.
So, Doron, Shabbat Shalom from Bridges for Peace. And from me, Ilse Strauss, at Bridges for Peace headquarters here in Jerusalem, the city of the Great King. Thank you for joining us. Good night.